that are affected by what is currently has been put forth by the Town Council. To the Board of Supervisors of Caroline County, we, the undersigned residents and/or property owners along the Tidewater Trail Route 17 corridor west of Route 301, urge the Caroline County Board of Supervisors to move the proposed western Port Royal town boundary back toward Route 301 such that it does not place our properties inside the proposed new town limits. The attached map shows the modification to the boundary line in blue. Any further extension to the west along Route 17 toward Fredericksburg is not, in our opinion, consistent with the stated objective of the town to meet its current critical and long-term financial needs, i.e., to obtain tax revenue on business properties. Again, the additional land the town is asking for is purely agricultural farmland, includes 2 homes, and should not be included as a part of the town. And I have the signatures and the map and copies for everyone on the board.
That would be great. If you could pass those to Mr. Parton and he would bring those up. Do you have an original for yourself?
And I have the original to give you if you would like.
You're going to give us the original?
If you would like it.
I don't want it if you have a copy.
I'll give you 6 copies.
Perfect. That's perfect.
I very much appreciate this opportunity to present this to you, and I very much appreciate your consideration of this request to move this boundary for us.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. We'll take a look at the maps you've given us and the signatures. And
thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. The next speaker, please. Remember to just state your name and your voting district. No addresses, because we record these.
My name is Ellen Martin, and I'm in the Port Royal district.
Perfect.
I am one of the 2 homeowners that are set up in this boundary. We're right on the boundary. It's the corner there on the west side, right across from the Holloway farmland. My husband and I purchased the home 19 years ago. When we looked where we wanted to purchase our home, if we wanted to purchase inside the town boundaries, we would have done so 19 years ago. We just found out recently, just in the last couple of weeks, that this was taking place, but yet it's been proposed and talked about for well over a year. Found it very frustrating to find out that so many things were being done that's affecting us, my husband and I, behind our backs, is the way we have felt that this has happened, what the town is doing. I understand they need help. I do understand that. But do not include me into something like that without my knowledge. Thank you very much.
Before you go, Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
you're on this petition.
Yes.
And we have a map that's redrawn. That's what you're talking about, so it
Yes.
does include your house. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Good evening, distinguished board members, Port Royal Town Council members, citizens of Caroline County, and guests. My name is Phyllis Goldman Carpenter, and I reside at 7299 Edmont Road in the Port Royal District, on the hill overlooking the intersections of Route 17 and 301. My family arrived in the area in 1668, and I am 10th generation of that family. Through these generations, they have been involved in supporting Port Royal and developing the areas around through such activities as farming and sawmill operations, bankers, merchants, garage owners, carpenters, tinners, plumbers, soldiers, antique store owners, teachers, and lastly with me, a bed and breakfast innkeeper after I retired from teaching in our county. So I have vested interest in the county, and we own properties in both. As in all family histories, futures are built on heritages, and that's what comes to mind with Port Royal. Please help us retain our heritage and help us to build a brighter future in Port Royal. And yes, farmland is important, and we have a wonderful property of 61 acres right on the Rappahannock River, that we would love to be in the town of Port Royal. Port Royal is going to need a little wiggle room, too, to expand and expanding its boundaries will ensure that 50 years from now, they don't have to come back to the county and say, can we have some more land? We have lots of people who want to locate here. We hope it comes to that. I come before you and ask that you grant the proposed Port Royal boundary line change to help ensure the survival of our wonderful historic town and area. I requested that my family's homes and properties be included. I went to them, they didn't come to me. I have talked with 5 of you individually, and I look forward to becoming a town resident and will work hard where needed. Thank you for your support in this vitally important matter.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Carolyn Davis. I am a retired teacher and administrator in Caroline County. My family has lived in Port Royal area since the early 1700s, and I'm kin to a lot of these people that you've seen here tonight. And I must remind the guys that my father served on this board also. So I know it's an important job that you have. I grew up in Port Royal, outside of the town, never really knowing that I wasn't in the town. I was always from Port Royal. My address is still Port Royal, and I still live outside of the town. However, since I have retired, I spend much of my time inside the town now, and today my life revolves around things that are in town, because I am a vestry member at St. Peter's Church, and because I represent Port Royal on the library board, and because I am on the board of the Historic Port Royal, where I serve there and coordinate the docents for the new museum that we have. So I spend a lot of time in Port Royal, and I'm very proud of that town, and the people that come through the museum say such wonderful things about the heritage that we have and how very proud we should be of it. But tonight I really come to share some notes from my friend and colleague, Mrs. Cleo Coleman, who is president of Historic Port Royal, and Cleo is out of town tonight with a family commitment that was made prior to this time. And I'm just going to share a few brief notes that she has given me. And Cleo, of course, you know, is a student of history, and she begins by saying, as a student of history, I have had in the past a fondness for honoring the historic boundaries of this town established in 1744. However, in recent years, I experienced a change of mind on this issue. Sometimes necessity trumps history. Currently, this is true regarding the issue of expanding the town's boundaries. Port Royal's declining population and its severely limited financial sources mandate the necessity for change. As one of only 2 chartered municipalities within the county, Port Royal's governing leaders have succeeded over many years in keeping this town viable. Now the residents of this old colonial port town join with the council in seeking the cooperation and the partnership of the county government. I voice a personal plea to each of the supervisors to vote yes on the boundary extension for Port Royal. And I utter a gentle reminder that failure to help the town and its citizens in this matter will result in a much higher cost to the county financially if repairing the sidewalks and paying the town's light bill and establishing a water system, all of this could fall upon the county government. I live into the hope that each of you will make the right decision, and I thank you sincerely. Cleo Coleman, resident of Port Royal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Is there another one who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Tommy Morse. I'm not a resident, live in Spotsylvania County. I'm the owner of Horns Restaurant. My mailing address, I'm in Caroline County, but my mailing address is Port Royal. My business card says Horns of Port Royal. I've always considered myself part of the town of Port Royal. A lot of the services I get from Port Royal, whether it's fire department or rescue or whatever it happens to be. So I am part of that town, whether my physical address is wherever it is. I'm part of Port Royal. As a business person, I see a lot of people out of work. I see a lot of businesses that go out of business. And right now I see a town that's struggling for survival. And it is a very, very historic place, and in the past that hasn't necessarily had the biggest role, but there's a group of people that run the town of Port Royal right now who are very concerned about the history of Port Royal and the survival of Port Royal. And as a part of history, it would be a real shame to see that town disappear. From an economic standpoint, I see where the county may lose a little bit of money up front, but in the long run, there's a lot more to be gained in terms of the expenses that the county would have. And with the group of people that are running the town right now, there's going to be a whole lot more growth. And things will thrive because they want to. You know, they just need a little help. So I thoroughly support what the town is trying to do. I back them up 100%. Water systems I know quite a bit about because about 20 years ago, the water system for Port Royal just didn't work anymore. So I have my own water systems. My well, and I have my own wastewater treatment plant on my property. Okay, so I know how expensive these things can be. If you all have to put in a wastewater treatment plant down in Port Royal, it's going to cost you millions and millions of dollars. I don't think there's any question about that. So these people are trying to do something and trying to achieve something that they can do by themselves. They just need a little bit of help. So I'm asking that you approve the annexation. Thank you.
Tommy, before you go, and excuse the personalness, but was it Morse?
Morse, M-O-R-S-E.
M-O-R, Morse, like code?
Right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
And nobody knows what Morse code is nowadays, but that's another story. The next speaker.
Hello, I'm Bill Henderson. I'm a citizen and town council member from Port Royal. I have a letter I'd like to read you tonight from Mr. Sedell Brooks, who is a business owner in Port Royal and distinguished member of the King George Board of Supervisors. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow colleagues of this distinguished Board of Supervisors of Caroline County. I, Sedell Brooks, Jr., owner of Sedell Brooks Funeral Home Incorporated, Port Royal, Virginia, write this letter in full support of the proposed boundary line adjustment. This will be a positive boost to the economical and financial status of the town of Port Royal, Virginia. This town has such a great potential, and this shall give a great boost to our area. I apologize for not being there tonight in person, but today is my 25th wedding anniversary. At your service, Mr. Sedell Brooks.
We don't want him at our service right now. But thank you very much. The next speaker, Ms. Watson, you're here.
Kay Watson. I live in the Port Royal District, and I just want to bring up a few things about the boundary line adjustment, which I'm against, but I do realize that Port Royal is struggling. I really don't think that this is the answer. One of the businesses that opened in 2011 has already been closed. One of the Ninos, the restaurant, is already closed. Times are tight everywhere, and I really wonder whether this will help at all. And the county is struggling also, and they are going to lose money because of this, lose money from their budget if these businesses go to Port Royal. And my problem with Port Royal is that they waited too long. They didn't try to do anything. The water system was put in 42. In April of 86, there was a survey that the water was poor quality. In 2004, in the Port Royal Community Plan, the water system was listed as a hot button issue. In November of 2009, the town was notified that it was in violation of state regulations. And then in November 2011, that they were quoted in the Caroline Progress as Mr. Wick said that also discussed with other council members that Heimbach mentioned months ago the fact the town is putting out more money than it takes in. Many of the areas of the town need repair. also, such as streets and sidewalks. It is obvious that we need to develop some sort of revenue coming in, said Wick. This was 6 months before Union Bank and Trust closed. Then in January of 2012, at another Port Royal meeting, Mayor Nancy Long was quoted as saying that she is still researching what it would cost to replace the town's water tower. Then in May of 2012, Union Bank, First Market Bank closed, and then in December 2012, they asked for the boundary line adjustment. I think they should have been working on doing something prior to that, and that at this point, if they do get the boundary line adjustment and they don't get the grant, do they then turn around and give the county back the money that comes from those taxes to help pay? Because the county's going to have to pay for the water, I'm sure. And one other thing I did want to state, that some Board of Supervisors members and Town Council members had said that it would not affect hunting, which, according to Virginia Code Section 15.2-1113.1, any municipal corporation may, by ordinance, prohibit all hunting with firearms or other weapons in or within 1/2 mile of any subdivision or other area of such municipal corporation which, in the opinion of the governing body, is so heavily populated as to make such hunting dangerous to the inhabitants thereof. And as I said, I just wanted to say it needs to be some type of agreement made with them if they do get this boundary line adjustment, and then the county has to pay for their water, that they have to pay those taxes back to the county to help to pay for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I'm Bill Wick, Vice Mayor of the Town of Port Royal. I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to announce that we're working very closely with the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, and Kathleen Kilpatrick, who is the Executive Director, that was going to be here tonight, but she is sick. And she asked an underling to send me a letter that can be entered into the record, and he didn't send it to me.
Oh.
So if I can bring it down tomorrow, I'll schlep it down here tomorrow if you can put it in the record, keep the record open.
Okay.
Okay? They're very supportive of the boundary line adjustment.
Well, I tend to do things that I need to ask the county attorney for later, so I'm going to ask her now. We can do that?
Well, it's not necessary. They can always submit written letters, for the record. It won't be read into the record here, but it will become part of the record.
Become part of it, okay.
And it can be, provided at your next meeting so that everybody can have it.
Kind of like an addendum or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
They're very supportive of the adjustment, and they just want to make that known.
Okay. We wanted to make sure we could make it happen the correct way, Mr. Wick, so we'll do that.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Is there...
Good evening, Alex Long, Port Royal. What we really have here is a choice between the Port Royal we have today or a Port Royal that could be much, much better in the future. This town is about 78 acres. It is very claustrophobic. When you strip out the road rights-of-way, the town is perhaps 60 acres. There is no room to grow. There is no real room to obtain a site for a sewage treatment system. In the winter, when you go down 301, at times you can see steam come up from some of the VDOT ditches because there's sewage going in those ditches. We need a sewer plant. We need an expanded water plant. The town needs room to grow. The town of Bowling Green has expanded twice. Bowling Green has annexed twice. Is Caroline County the worse for it? No. I think Caroline County is much better for a very strong town of Bowling Green. The town of Port Royal is your gateway. That's the entry from one of the large corridors coming into this county. And what do you have? A broken down little town because we don't have the people, we don't have the businesses, we don't have the core to sustain a future. or even try to claw towards a future. What we're doing here tonight is not just for the people in this room. The decision you will make will go way beyond that and impact what that town is going to look like and its relationship with Caroline County 25, 50, 60 years into the future. Whether this town will just evaporate and Caroline County gets to take care of the water system and the other problems that we have over there. And will Caroline County be the better for it? Because the town, in fact, as a town, can obtain grant money that the county might not otherwise be able to avail itself of. So, again, it's a choice between what you have there today or whether you want a vision of something grander, much grander in the future. Whether we can work together to build, or whether we can let fear of the unknown, fear of, oh my God, my taxes might go up $10, drag us down and pull us back into a pool of fear.
Mr. Long, can you summarize, please?
Yes, I will. And it's unfortunate that some of my friends don't want to be in the town. I can understand their concerns, but perhaps we can work that out when we do the joint land use study with Fort A.P. Hill, and those lands can be green spaced or open space since they want to keep it agriculture, and maybe the town can work around that and just green space those properties and then get us some land over on the other side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Bye.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? And to the young lady in the back, if you'd like to come forward so she can speak, and you'll be right here for the next one.
Hello, I'm Monica Chenault, and I live in the town of Port Royal. And with my husband, we own 3 pieces of property, so we're paying taxes on 3 lots. So we are in support of the boundary adjustment. My husband's family also was in the A.P. Hill district and had to move out, and so I can understand people's fear of the unknown and the fear of losing what was their homeland, with the being pushed out when A.P. Hill came in. And I just want to reassure people, I'm also on the town council, that we are trying to listen to everyone's needs and do the best job that we can. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Catherine Hicks. I am the priest at St. Peter's in Port Royal. And I'm not a resident of Port Royal. I actually reside in Spotsylvania County, but I work in Port Royal. And I have to say that in the going on 4 years now I've been there, my heart is very much a part of Port Royal. I am hugely in support of this boundary adjustment. I believe that it is what we need in order to survive and thrive as a town. And I'm not here to preach a sermon, but I have to say, in the great sweep of our story of salvation, the Bible starts with the story of a garden, and it ends with the story of the heavenly city coming down out of heaven in Revelation. And I can't help but make a comparison with that city. It's a great example of urban planning. It's got water running right down the middle of the city streets. It's good water that everybody can drink. It's got God's light in it. And these things are the things that people need to have dignified life. And our community really wants to work together, and we are working together to try to make that possible for the residents of Port Royal. And you can help us do that, and I so hope that you will. So thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. It wasn't the first time either. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this matter?
Good evening. My name is Morgan Zwicker. I'm the owner of Pine Hill Towing and Automotive, which is in Port Royal, right at the intersection of 301 and Route 17. I'm a business owner there. I'm not a resident there. I'm a resident of King George. I've been there going on 4 years, and the town of Port Royal has been in need of some dire repair maintenance-wise, their streets, their sidewalks, their water system, their sewer system. And I realize that there's a lot of opinions that have been spoken tonight, but there's so much history in Port Royal. And I myself was blind to that until I opened a business up there and became acquainted with some of the local people and some of the background that the town of Port Royal, the historical background that's in that town. And there's so much traffic that travels through that corridor, both from the north and the south, that I think it's just an opportunity for that town to thrive with the historical background that it has. I've been to the museum, I've seen some things there, and I was just kind of set back because I never knew that there was so much history there, right in our backyard, so to speak. And there's so many children in our schools today that I think they don't even realize that that history is so close and so reachable. And I'm in support of the boundary adjustment for the reason that the money has to come from somewhere, or Port Royal is going to either fade off or the Caroline County is going to have to step in and do something. And I just think that if the business owners in Port Royal would participate into it, which they will if the boundary agreement is passed, and I realize it's going to affect some farms and so on, but the historical factor there to me is just so, if it's lost, it's gone, you know, and it's just the traffic that comes in there, that comes into Caroline County from the north, and from up 17 and down 17, back and forth, that intersection there is just astronomical. And for that to, that in turn makes the businesses grow because it gives opportunities for the local businesses to thrive off of that. But I encourage you to let the boundary agreement go forward and to see our history maintained there in Port Royal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding the subject that's not on Port Royal Town Council? All right, we don't normally let everybody from Town Council speak. I assumed that everybody in Town Council was going to say they were in favor of it.
Yes.
So surprise me.
My name is Della Mills.
Yes,
I'm a citizen of Port Royal and a member of Town Council. I wanted to address a couple of things that I hadn't heard brought up here. Several years ago, maybe 5 or 6, I served on a committee for the county for the Port Royal sub-area, secondary growth area for rewriting the comprehensive plan. One of the things that we put a lot of emphasis on that came out of that committee meeting was the need to use the gift we have in the Rappahannock River as a recreational draw and, you know, scenic area there. Right now, this town council that's sitting in Port Royal has, through a great deal of their own time and their skill sets, been able to put together $62,000+ towards developing the end of King Street with a fishing pier and a soft launch and landscaping and things like that. If we don't have any revenues coming in, we can't hope to maintain anything that's being put down there. Annexation, boundary line adjustments have come up many, many times in the past. I've served on council on and off now for the past 20 years. And this is the first time that we've really gotten to a meeting of minds and have a hope of doing this where this town might actually be able to survive a while longer. So yes, I'm very much in favor of it. And thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this subject? Is there anyone else who would like to speak regarding this subject? Last call. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Hearing none, we will declare the public hearing to be closed. We do have some other information to add in. What I want to say, first of all, is I believe that the Board of Supervisors would like very much to help the town of Port Royal. I believe that a vibrant, successful Port Royal is good to the county. Obviously, from my discussions with the mayor and town council, we may disagree on how to get there, but that is our eventual goal. I do have a couple of things that were given to us. I have a map from Mr. Holloway that I think we put on everybody's desk, so they should have that. That was part of his his information. And Mr. Cully, at the request, and we are just looking at all possible avenues, all possible things at this point in time, but when this originally came up to us, we were discussing the water system being the biggest expense, I guess, the town has, and we were looking at other things. So I'll ask Mr. Cully to go over that real quick as just another alternative. Yeah, let him go, and then we'll do question and answer among the board if there is some. Mr. Cully?
Members of the board, Mr. Schiebel put this together after it had come up back a month or so ago about the potential of the county taking the water system over to look at the other water systems that are pretty much adjoining the town. And there is a system up there that was put in according to county code, meets all of the county requirements for a system, and actually due to code has to be turned over to the county if the county requests. Obviously, we haven't made that request because we don't want to take over just a subdivision in the Port Royal area and have to run that. But it does have the capacity with a 72,000-gallon ground storage tank, 4.5-inch well, 2 booster pumps, so that it has the ability to support the system if they were interconnected, and then would have the additional connections on their additional users on the system. There are some other systems in mobile home park, and then an additional piece of a subdivision that are up there, but those aren't required necessarily to be turned over to us. We'd have to negotiate to put those all together. But you can see you're adding connections with each one of those to where you're coming up on equal connections to what the town already has if you were able to do that. So there are some potentials, especially with the system that currently exists under county code that would have to be turned over to us, that's built to current standards to use as what would really be the backbone of the system, supplying water and storage for the town. And I'm sure Mr. Schiebel can answer these questions if you have any with more detail than I can.
Okay, I think we're probably going to get into that at a later point in time, but the reality is, just to make sure we understand, or I understand, there is the Port Royal landing of Townfield. That's the one that has an actual system built to county code. Okay, that's correct. That's the one built to county code, and that particular system could be turned over to the county at the county's request, and that particular system has enough capacity to provide water to the town, and they would function exactly as they are with water now. Okay. Mr. Schiebel said with the existing well from the town of Port Royal, yes. I think that's all, because we're just trying to grab everything. There are some other things we wanted to, so that's the information we had before. There was discussion before. I think Mr. Seeley, you had mentioned that there was possibly a revenue split, possibly an idea that if the town expanded, some of that money would come to the county. I think Mr. Akers said something similar. Don't have it take effect until July 1 of next year, so that the revenue the county has in this budget would stay in this budget. I'd ask the town for a work session so we could get through it. I think Mr. Taylor said you were going to answer questions, but I think after we've gathered this information from the public hearing and whatever discussion, maybe we probably do need to sit down as board to board or board to council and kind of figure out things, because if there are discussions about taking some pieces out, which we had quite a few people, if we do that, we'd have to go through the process of a public hearing again, which is no problem. But Mr. Black, if you have a question, comment, or something you'd like to add?
I just actually have just a question for Mayor Long or members of the council, whichever can answer, maybe Mr. Heimbach or Mr. Wick. What was the, I guess I'm just kind of curious about what's the reason for all the farmland? I mean, we hear tonight a lot of people who own the farmland, or many of them are opposed to putting that in the town. I'm just kind of curious as to what the thinking was as to our including them in the boundaries.
Right, I understand. And I also want to explain, this final map was not where we started. This final map is is what came about by meeting with the county's planning commission and the town council. We felt we really needed part, at least, of the agricultural fields on the west side of 301 because the commercial strip there is so tiny. VDOT wants turning lanes everywhere. Well, if you put a turning lane every place on a road that, even though we have 35 miles an hour up there, you know, it doesn't slow anybody down. There's going to be more accidents than we've already had. So you need to be able to have enough room on the other side of our current boundaries so that if a business does become interested, they either have room for a turning lane or room to run a service road around. As a matter of fact, we started with less of the agricultural land, but it was felt that for green spacing and future developments and for simplicity of administration, it was the recommendation of the planning department that we run the lines where they were currently represented. And another issue on the agricultural land, I know you've heard from the Carpenter family who has agricultural land. Also, I do know that Mr. Kermit Thomas, who has 2 pieces of agricultural land, has told me he's in favor of
I think he signed a petition.
Okay, last time I talked to Kermit, he was fine. As a matter of fact, he had said he wished that both of his pieces of property were in the boundary line adjustment. So I'm not sure where the conflict is there, because I haven't talked to him recently. But this map was changed several times, and the final product is a product that was produced by meeting with your planning department and with the town. Of course, after this, if you want to meet again, we'll be glad to. But the basic idea was to have more growth on the west side of 301 so that we could attract businesses. We've already lost a couple of businesses in the current town boundaries because of the size and VDOT wanting turn lanes. I also am going to take this opportunity while I'm up here to stress, water is an issue. Water is not our only problem. We have to be able to maintain whatever we have, and we have to be able to fix what we've got. So although I would certainly discuss anything with water with the county, I would love to have a water system that would provide fire suppression so that we can attract more businesses. And if we can get a 100% grant, that would be great. We can do that. We can go for it. If we can't, then maybe there are other options.
Thank you, Ms. Long.
Has anyone, maybe this is for, have we ever, this alternative that we've been dealing with this for, someone said about a year. This alternative, this is the first time we're hearing about this tonight. And I guess I'm kind of curious as to why this hasn't been discussed before.
The water?
The alternative, yeah.
The alternative for water?
Yeah, the alternative for water.
Probably because we talked just about the county taking over their water system. And as a result of, I think, the last time they were here, Mr. Sheba was on vacation. When he got back, we asked him to look at water systems in there, and that's what we got today.
Could I?
Are you going to get your turn?
Can I ask Mr. Sheba a question? Or are we, no?
I'm just starting with him and then we'll come back around.
I just have a question for you. I got something today I asked for actually from Mr. Parton. I'm not sure if we got this. It's a preliminary engineering report for the town of Port Royal, Virginia water system. Okay, and the number in it is just kind of striking to me. According to this, the water system to replace, water storage tank 900,000, water distribution for the town would be $1.15 million. Is that accurate? Because this is...
That's if you go with a 100% totally new system. I mean, that's replacing everything from top to bottom, brand new water tower, all new mains sized to be able to handle fire suppression. So if you were to build it to today's standard, that's what it would cost in today's dollars to go into that system and completely redo it to meet today's standards.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Seeley, questions? I know you had concerns about revenue sharing and things like that.
Well, the revenue sharing, I think, becomes a much easier point to negotiate. You did it with the town of Bowling Green over the shopping center. I mean, it's something that can be done very easily and I think fairly quickly. The boundary line adjustment, and let me just say that I've talked to several folks here on the phone. I spent at least 45 minutes with, I believe, Mr. Holloway on the phone, and have talked to planning. The boundary line has to be something that we can actually maintain. We can't just draw a line across the field and say, that's the boundary line. You know, we can't be 100 feet from the corner or something and say, okay, that's going to be what's in the town, the rest isn't. I heard that, oh, you can't hunt on land. That ordinance said may. The town doesn't have to enact that ordinance. Hunting still is maintained at Old Mansion, is still maintained in other pieces of property, large pieces of property in the town. Those issues are a lot less concerning. But as far as farmland, there has to be some method to be able to move back and allow businesses to move. The minute we move this boundary line and a business wants to move, we're going to have landowners in front of us going, we need to do a boundary line adjustment on a little bit of land to put it in the town so we can put a business in. So it's either plan for it now and do one boundary line adjustment, which I think is what we should do, rather than try to come down, because if you notice there's jagged lines in this now, and they'll get even more jagged as time moves forward. So I understand the landowners with the farmland. Being in the town doesn't have the effect. Town council can manage what they want by ordinance, and I don't think that's an issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood?
Mr. Chairman, and I've listened to people from both sides of the fence, literally. And I think I look at Port Royal and the history of Port Royal will never change no matter what we decide. I'm not one who reacts to fear tactics and that Port Royal is going to cease to exist. I just think there still remains a way to listen to the farmers, to continue to try to assist. I'm just not sure this is the absolutely best thing. So I still have some questions, but I'm just not sure where I'm going right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I have several questions of several different people.
Well, let's call them up one at a time.
Okay. Mr. Fincham, you may can answer the question from where you at. In the town of Bowling Green, Mr. Seeley referenced a large parcel of land, which is the Old Mansion area. Yeah. Okay. So there are others in the town that is basically farmed. Okay. That was my question. Mr. Schiebel.
Thank you, Mr. Fincham.
We talked about the alternative water system. The county takes over the Port Royal landing of Townville. There's no cost to that process. Do we now have to run lines to connect to the Port Royal system wells, and does that not cost money?
That's correct, it does.
Okay. Do you have any estimate as to what that would cost?
We do not. We recommended in that proposal that the board look at a PER, depending on how many of the systems you would want to look at. The maximum of $7,500 to update the current PER to include the other three water systems that would determine and evaluate each of those options of the feasibility of taking them over, current issues that each of those systems could have, and the feasibility of how it would work, rates, maps, and things like that.
So we really don't know that that's a